Good afternoon and good evening, everybody, and good morning from my corner of the world here in the United Kingdom. For a one-off only. This won't happen again, I promise. This is purely my scheduling. Hope you're all well. We've convened this evening with no topic, and we're going to put ourselves into your safe keeping of your hands to check out any hot topics that you want to hit. We've got some backup, so if your brains go blank, then no worries. We can fill the gaps, no problem. But we are obviously your fortnightly fast charge on electric vehicles and infrastructure. So within that kind of remit, whether you want to talk DCFC, level 2 charging, or the EV models that go to those networks, we're here to help and do that. Quick shout out for mostly audio. I've got everything except for one that went errant up on the archives, and this one should go through the next day as well, so we should be back on track with that. And let us know where you are, what you're driving, and any topics you want to discuss down in the comments, and we'll get to those as we come through. I wanted to give a quick shout out to some pretty sterling work here, which you've probably seen by now. It's been out a couple of weeks already, but DCFCtracker.com, and that's Alejandro EV66's project over on X. I think I can actually show here a little bit, just so you kind of get a flavor for what this does if you haven't already caught this. It's a really nice little, I say little, it's got to be a pretty huge project. He sounds like he knocked it out in a weekend, but it's a solid list that pulls from the AFDC. So if you're watching Walter's archives, Alternative Fuels Data Center pulls every week, then you'll kind of see some of this being familiar in this week's update, I'm sure. It kind of lists everything in opening date order. You can sort it by a bunch of different other things. Your network's up here, power stall when it's added. You can go through past the previous week. So it looks like Walter's going to be talking about something called Synergy V. Looks like they've done a data dump. You've got some Shell Recharge, Mercedes-Benz, Rivian Adventure Network, a lot of different stuff in there from this week already, and then you can kind of map it out to see what's in your area. So a really useful site, just kind of gives you all of the little pieces that you want to look at in terms of the distribution, geography, networks, power levels, all that good stuff. So highly recommend checking out dcfctracker.com, and with thanks to Alejandro EV66, not just for his permit spotting, but also for the work he's done on this one. Yeah, and if there's anything on there that anyone spots that you want to talk about, that is a good segue into tonight. Just open Q&A. As I say, we've got some topics pre-prepared, and there's plenty of breaking stuff with EVgo's Q4 results. Walter just dropped the video on that. Eric has plenty to say on various networks, and I do not believe, he may believe, I don't know. So if you want to get into Donut Labs and their technology, we can get into that. But let's see, just right off the bat, why don't you guys tell me what you're seeing in the news at the moment, and I'm going to go through the comments. I will present any kind of topics that are coming up as we get to them and introduce folks at the same time. I'll start with Eric as he is there.
Ooh, in the news. Oh no. Yeah, no, I was thinking about talking about the donut thing. And no, I think I might still be in the donut believe category. So for those of you who do not know, the Donut Labs responded to the criticisms by releasing a series of third-party tests to validate their technology and show people that it is actually what they said it is, that it's actually working and doing what they claim. And unfortunately for me right now, I'm having more red flags than I had going into it, because I went into it saying, hey, look, this seems kind of unreasonable, and here are the metrics that I would like to see. And those aren't being answered right now by any of these tests. And that's a little bit disconcerting for me. And then especially the confession, essentially, that they didn't do any third-party testing before they actively went out seeking investors. So to me, that itself is a huge confession and a huge red flag if you don't even know the product that you have and you're seeking money for it. So but suffice to say, they showed a couple of clips of testing the cells. And for those of you who aren't familiar with just the whole process of testing battery cells, when you're testing an individual cell, you can do all sorts of things that you couldn't do if it was actually a commercial sale, because you don't have to account for the fact that it needs to last, right? So if you do a single cycle at 10C, maybe that battery just goes in the bin when you're done, right? Because it's toast. You just cooked it. So there's a lot of questions about that. So I'm actually at the point myself where I feel like I might just be checking out and then waiting until they unveil, because what I'm hearing a lot from in the community is either Donut is going to win the Nobel Prize for basically world-changing technology, or they're going to win an Oscar for the best performance for claiming to have world-changing technology. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But like I said, in the meantime, I don't really like the, oh, we're going to incrementally release one thing after another. And the tests that they're showing, none of them that I see in the pathway of what they're planning to release is going to actually answer the questions that I had. And then the one thing that I saw from their initial 10C test is they kind of slipped through and showed that the round trip efficiency for the cell is only about 90%. So that's a huge hit, right? It means if you have a 10 kilowatt hour battery pack, it's effectively the equivalent of a 9 kilowatt hour battery pack in like a nickel, manganese, cobalt, or other LFP chemistry, right? The difference in round trip efficiency is massive at that point. So that was already concerning. But like I said, we'll have to see. But so far, I'm concerned because none of my metrics that I asked about really seem to be addressed. And everything that they've showed so far could be achieved simply by taking a 15-year-old lithium titanate cell, putting two of them in series, and then testing them as though they were a single cell. And basically none of the numbers that they've presented up to this point couldn't be achieved with a 15-year-old battery technology with just a little behind the scenes, put it in series instead of parallel. So, well, I don't know what else to tell you on it, but that's kind of where I am right now following that. So I will keep you posted, but for right now, I'm kind of like taking a step back and just saying, you know what, tease away. I'll check in when you actually put something out that's substantive. So
I do believe in the marketing. It's definitely got the attention of the industry for almost all of the first quarter, right? So
Oscar worthy.
It feels scripted, right? Let's go to CES. We'll make an unbelievable claim, and then we'll string this puppy out for the next 6 months.
Well,
you just have that domain ready to go.
And what is
registered sometime? I do not believe, or do not believe. Right?
Yeah. Well, and what was it? VTT, VVT. I'm gonna mix up the letters now. It's supposed to be a third-party testing, but it made me feel like they were presenting from inside this third-party lab, but it's a donut employee that's presenting, and you never see anybody from the lab talking about their testing procedures or equipment. And it just makes me feel like, is it like there's two doors on a building and one of them is a third-party tester and one of them's Donut Lab, but no matter which door you go through, you're in the same building? That's what it kind of feels like. So we'll see. But yeah, it's, if nothing else, just it's entertainment.
It's definitely something to keep the industry talking, because that has got more attention than anything else I've seen this year, honestly. Okay, well, we'll put a pin in that one. I do want to hit EVgo at some point, because Walter's obviously just dropped that video, and I think all of us will be interested to see what the headlines are coming out of that. But there's some excellent stuff here. This is actually more just Leonard doing his thing and helping us kind of break news as we go. But I think this is worth kind of just pulling through, because he was at the opening of the Jenks Supercharger for business, but a Francis Energy upgraded.
Yeah, they
site
had a whole
on
event
source.
over that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is going back, right, just to kind of contextualize it for anyone who comes to this late. Lynn had helped us out, kind of give us the heads up on the Francis Energy network in Oklahoma, which is where a good chunk of its hardware is, and the network kind of starts out of there. A lot of the sites are going back to 2020, 2021, kind of early, and had a reputation for not being the most user-friendly, shall we say, and reliability was not as good as it should have been, probably to put it lightly, and Crazy Postman will put in various emojis to express that. But come December, we kind of got inklings that they would be going to Tesla hardware. It was only at 1 or 2 sites at the time, but we've since seen them just kind of move on. I think they've opened a bunch of sites since. We've seen 4 in a week at one point, all over that kind of Oklahoma network. So I'm going to kind of read these out in order because it was obviously at the opening of that Jenks site and had a bunch of insights. So I'll just read these as well for anyone who's on the audio version later. Number 1, then, Francis will be moving more and more to true V4. That's 1000 volt. So the full power cabinets and dispensers as well. The more familiar V4 dispensers out there quite widely, but the power cabinet's the thing that everybody wants to kind of follow. And that starts to open up stuff for people like me in an Ioniq 5 and actually wanting to use those a little bit more, not being capped at 100, 130, depending on which model you have. So that's, as time goes on, eventually moving to installing only V4 units. Availability of equipment is the main constraint of the problem, which we also see on the Tesla side. I think only 2 or 3 true V4 locations open at the moment. Number 2, Francis will be expanding organically or upgrading site equipment depending on the situation. A few new sites include a new station in Henrietta, Oklahoma, at the new Casey's, newly built or still being built. Love's Travel Plaza sites are not a guaranteed upgrade, since Love's may want to opt out to do their own chargers as Francis leases expire. We do know that Love's is with ChargePoint for the most part, hardware, and also going with Electric Era in some places where they need battery backup, like up in the mountains in Buena Vista, Colorado. So yeah, there is obviously some overlap there with the likes of Love's, where Francis does have some older sites. Number 4, Francis uses SK Signet chargers where Nevi is involved, but otherwise will use Tesla V4 chargers for new expansions. Okay. And 50 kilowatt existing sites are being considered for upgrades, and where that happens, they will upgrade to higher power Tesla V3.5, V4, low power DC. And I think, no, there's a couple more. Francis has noticed a huge uptick in usage at upgraded sites, agreeing with me that they have their chargers in Tesla navigation and other non-Tesla's navigation as Tesla boosted driver confidence. Moving forward,
they don't have to pay extra for that as a Tesla Supercharger for business site. I think that just automatically appears. Like once you're in the network, it's like just kind of a fringe benefit of going with them.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that their pricing has come down significantly from, it was across the board in Oklahoma, 52 cents per kilowatt hour. And then from the first ones that they've opened with the Superchargers, they've gone down to 44 cents per kilowatt hour. So I had asked about that and whether it was something that was part of, a factor of the hardware being cheaper and being able to do that going forward. They can't comment on it because it's, pricing strategy and considered kind of, corporate strategy that they shouldn't be able to share. But, in general, it's proving to be cheaper at this pay. I don't know if that's dependent on Tesla, only having a certain amount of time for that to give them that pricing on the energy, but it's obviously helping them lower prices across that upgraded site.
Yeah, and we've got Dan the EV man in the audience also. He recently did a Francis update where he was also seeing indication that their prices are kind of dropping across the board in other non-Tesla Supercharger for business locations as well.
Yeah, there's lots of good updates coming from Dan. He does Francis Energy, Ready, and some of the Nevi kind of regional stuff on Michigan.
Yep. Michigan.
So, well worth checking out the channel, and another source of some good Francis info. Trying to round this out here because there's a lot of good stuff coming from Leonard. Moving forward, most expansion will be powered by private funding, most likely, rather than through government funds. Nevi did, in fact, seem to do more harm than good with the yanking away of funding. Other states will get upgrades as well, including New Mexico, after which there will be a path for me to use only Francis chargers to drive from Tulsa to Las Cruces, where my brother lives. I may have to keep skipping here. Francis made this transition as soon as was possible. As one of Tesla's first Supercharger for business clients, they wanted to replace old BTC chargers with Tesla Supercharger for business for a long time. And here we're at 12, relating to point 7, with the massive usage at the Norman site, they are considering capacity upgrades and may do so as needed. Now, I'm pretty sure Crazy Postman, if you haven't posted already, he did a site visit to one of them. I can't remember which one, and he did run into some power limitations. So I wonder if that, yeah, there we go. I have a video at that Jenks, Oklahoma site. Now I wonder from before it was Tesla. So I think probably the best thing I can do here is to post channel recommendations, because Crazy Postman's got a visit to one of the new Tesla Supercharger for business sites. Linda has visited them, and I know Dan, as Walter said, has done some good work on covering Francis from a kind of outside looking in perspective. So there's a bunch of stuff there that I think would be good follow-up reading for everybody, or watching in some cases. Let's see. I want to make sure we get some follow-up here on Eric's. Lab is legit for Donut, but they are running the tests that Donut's paying for. VTT is an extremely well-respected testing laboratory funded by the Finnish government. Yoli Traveler is with you. Eric wants to see real data from an independent review. So I'm not sure what's going on here. There's also somebody in here. Add a handle to continue. Does anybody have the podcast running already? It's not loading for me. There may be a live chat that's not loading. Perhaps that's something to do with web settings. I think everybody else seems to be able to post comments, and that's where we're getting some of the talking points here. So definitely happy to take your suggestions. We can see them. We may not be able to respond to you depending on what comes through, but there you go. We'll keep on pushing through. Walter, any thoughts on the kind of Francis side? You've obviously reported on this week after week. They had that big kind of opening week with 4 of them, but looks like that's going to be something that continues to push out, and it seems like something the industry will have to kind of keep an eye on, right? Because that's no small potatoes if Francis, one of the top 10 providers, is moving in there.
Yeah, there was a comment early on saying it's crazy that Francis might be at the forefront of the charging industry in the United States. Talk about a come from behind for the win. And I'm trying to find the comment right here. It's escaping my attention who called that out, but it's true, because if they're getting V4 chargers, at least temporarily until the 600 kilowatts come from the likes of Alpitronic HYC 1000s, and Kempower has some 600 kilowatt in the works as well. Until those start to hit the streets, Tesla Supercharger gets the prize for fastest charging stations in the United States. And Francis might very well be sporting one of the ones that are open to the public in underserved areas. Obviously, the Oklahoma and the panhandle of Texas and going into New Mexico is a pretty spread out area of the country, and there's not a lot as far as charging goes there. Anyone who's been there, if you stick to the interstate, you can get by just fine, but once you venture off the interstate, it's pretty tough to keep things going in that area. So the fact that there might be a V4, a pure V4 Tesla Supercharger station in those regions is definitely a surprise and change of fortunes. So long they've been the butt of the joke, but now all of a sudden everyone's turning and looking at them with being impressed at what they're in the process of accomplishing. So I don't know. It almost seems like there's not a story coming out of the charging industry currently where the CPO is absolutely slaying it. I don't know. Everyone seems to be doing tremendously well. I mean, even ChargePoint, who I was thinking was getting ready to have a very difficult string of events, according to Perrin, had the best non-Tesla stats put up for 2025. And, the list just keeps going on. I can't find any bad news anywhere. It's all good. And it must just mean that the underpinning of the industry as a whole are very solid.
Well, yeah, and Walter, you had that come from behind Cinderella's story with Mercedes-Benz too.
Someone asked that question too. I thought we might be getting to that. Yeah.
My challenge here might be to keep track with all the questions. But there's an air of negativity about this one if we want to try and balance things out a little bit, although Dan's a very positive resource for a lot of the expansive projects that we talked about. But topic suggestion: how do we as a community promote the recovery of abandoned sites like old Shell Recharge, Volta, or refreshers of EVgo sites that were left behind from the Renew program? So for context, the Shell situation is an old free charging company that was ad supported called Volta Media, came out around 2019, 2020, put in a whole lot of L2, a little bit of 50 kilowatt fast charging for free or a little bit of a charge at some point. Depending on where they were. They were bought by Shell to transition to the Shell Recharge network a few years ago. And last year, Shell Recharge had initially decided to just close them all up, rip them out, shut up shop, but they managed to sell them on to a Australian company who does ad-supported charging media called Jolt. So that's the kind of potted history of that, although there are definitely some of these sites, as Dan kind of highlights, the Shell Recharge sites that didn't get picked up by Jolt have been ripped out. The ones near my local grocery store over in Burlington, Massachusetts were ripped out just the last couple of weeks. But then one of the ones at a nearby AMC theater stayed in, and it has transitioned to Jolt. So some of those sites are actually really good. The grocery store one, I was quite surprised went because it was right up front, really prime kind of parking spots. I guess that may have been down to the site host rather than the quality of the site itself, whether they actually wanted that to be remaining there. And then on the EVgo side, you've got a lot of their locations that were kind of date back, 10 plus years, maybe in some cases. Those have been highlighted for either Renew, which is the part where they'll take them out and put in something like a Delta 100 kilowatt short boy kind of charger, or in some cases they've just replaced or ripped them out completely and those are gone. So I mean, Walter, have you seen any of these? I know you kind of dropped that EVgo video today, any mention of that in the kind of information there?
Yeah, so if I'll put a push pin in EVgo for just a second. I want to go back to the Volta and the Shell Recharge discussion you just had. You said that there was a Volta station that got shuttered because it wasn't picked up by Jolt. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, the purchase that they did wasn't for every single location. They either picked them, or maybe some site hosts didn't want to.
Yeah, because the reason I say this is because apparently, I mean, Shell Recharge has not been known for the most robust and best customer service stations in general. Shell Recharge is a parent CPO before they did this whole messy spinoff, and they did a lot of jerking, like not or erratic type of moves over here in the Southeast, where they were at one point doing the back end processing for Duke Energy's stations, and I think a few others were doing Shell Recharge, and then the Shell Sky Recharge, and then they just trashed that. And so it seems like there's a lot of moving around with Shell Recharge. And I recently came across a post on PlugShare, and it really made me think. It was at a Shell Recharge station, and the person said that they called into Shell Recharge in order to get help because the station wasn't working. It wasn't Volta, it was Shell Recharge, and they said, sorry, you have to call Volta or Jolt. And so they called over Jolt. They said, no, that's not our station. We don't even have that in our system. And so the person just had to drive away because they couldn't get any help from anyone. And it almost felt like Shell Recharge themselves were getting ready to shut down their stations in large, at least from the report I saw on that one PlugShare. And it might be just a confused customer service agent getting lost in translation what was being said to them, like the station number wasn't mentioned correctly. But I've been at stations where you call up someone on the phone and you just read the station ID right off the dispenser, and they dial into it and they reboot it, or they fix it. I'm sure we've all done that. Anyone who's in a non-Tesla has probably gone through that process, and it sounds very similar. And what he was saying is he was getting jerked around and had to call multiple different people, and finally after about 20 minutes just had to drive away from a station that was unable to service him. So that is probably one area of concern, is what Shell Recharge is doing, because their behavior hasn't really been steady and deliberate, and really getting mixed signals from them. But as far as EVgo, no, there wasn't really anything on the investor relation call that I listened to in its entirety about the Renew program, but they did talk about their next generation charging architecture, which was a reoccurring theme. And it kind of sounds like silicon carbide is going to be coming, and likely a distributed type of approach, kind of like a ChemPower sort of thing, but being cooked up in the labs in Delta, which I believe is headquartered in Taiwan, and higher power charging. So instead of 350, it's going to be some other number, likely 600 kilowatts. But as far as the Renew stations, no, there hasn't been a lot of mention of their plans in order to do rip and replace of existing. There was just mention of net new. That seems to be where their focus is right now. Previous investor relation conversations did kind of bring to the forefront the Renew program, but there was absolutely no mention of Renew on this investor relation deck, this investor relation earnings call, which is a good point. It's probably reason to be concerned.
And Eric, probably a lot of those older 50 kilowatt locations, if they are still in existence, are close to you, right? I'm sure you've used them a bunch of times. Have you kind of seen those? Do you visit those as you kind of go back down the memory lane trips?
Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing that's interesting about, I'll have to separate, right? Because there's the Shell Recharge with green lots. I think Zach called that out too, where it's like it was a mixed bag between green lots, Shell Recharge, and then the Volta that they took over, right? So, I don't know. I almost feel like Shell Recharge is kind of like the Ford of CPOs, in the sense that they don't have they never had like a clear plan, and they started acting first. But then it's why you saw them doing all sorts of, it was a very weird sort of shotgun approach of this and that and this and that. And it seemed like they were trying to cobble together a network, and it just never sort of solidified, right? So but I still do have active Shell Recharge stations out here, but then there are some that, as far as I know, they've never been opened, and they've like the chargers or dispensers are sitting under coverings, and they've been that way for like a year or two, like literally just sitting there, coming soon, waiting to be open. So I just don't know what to make of Shell Recharge at this point anymore. But with EVgo, I've seen a weird mix, right? Of there's a rip and replace, and then there's just a rip. And it's kind of hard to keep track. And I think one of the things that's happening on the back end with EVgo has to do with the property lease agreements. Because there's also, and like I said, I think, Walter, your video on EVgo is excellent, because it touched on a lot of elements that I think people don't think about from the corporate back end side of it. And so I think they're doing numbers too. So they're looking at some of these 10, 15-year-old charging sites and saying, is it worth replacing, right? Some of them they have. I think the Knob Hill in Salinas, that's one of the oldest ones that I used to use on my early Bolt EV trips, 9 years ago. They recently updated that one, and that was a standalone CHAdeMO 50 kilowatt, and then a CCS plus CHAdeMO 50 kilowatt, and they recently updated that site. So it's just, I think it depends on the location, the property lease agreement, whether it's worth it based on their numbers to upgrade it or to just abandon it, right? Unlike
Shell, they're very business focused.
Yeah. So, but they have, and that's the thing, and maybe that's the thing is, EVgo has a clear and cogent plan. Maybe, you as a consumer don't necessarily agree with it, but if you take a step and look back and look at it from a business perspective, you can at least respect their strategy. With, Shell Recharge, it was never really quite apparent what they were trying to do. And one other thing, and we didn't talk about this, but just a touch back to Francis in the context of something like EVgo, is I also think part of this, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because I saw some other comments asking about competitive pricing, but one of the things that I think is leading to these competitive pricing models, and it came out again in that EVgo call, is usage. The more usage you can get, right, the faster you can pay back those chargers. So if you're Francis Energy with BTC power chargers that are down half the time, and even when they are working, they're only dispensing 150 kilowatts, your ability to recoup the expenses of that charging site are way lower than they are if you have a consistently working hardware that can dispense 200, 300, 400 kilowatts all 24 hours a day. And I think that's what we're seeing with EVgo too, is I think it was by the end of 2024, right, more than 50% of their sites were 350 kilowatt at that point. So they're able to dispense enough power that their return on investment cycle shortens, because they're just, whatever your margin is on kilowatt hours that you're dispensing, the more of those kilowatt hours that you're dispensing, the faster you can recoup your expenses. And that's always, I think, been the massive advantage that Tesla has had, is it's baked into people's navigation. They're compelled to drive there. They're higher reliability, and they dispense a lot of power. And over the course of the descent day, you're seeing how much energy they're dispensing. And once you get to that point, then it really doesn't matter. You don't even need battery backups to like offset demand charges. You're just churning out so much power and so much energy at a consistent rate that you can set very competitive prices, and you don't have to worry about it. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing, back to the silver lining, Steve, across a lot of these CPOs.
How dare you? I'm trying to put myself in British mode and be a curmudgeon about everything.
Well, you can't have silver lining without clouds.
This is true. We don't have clouds here. I just left the snow behind me. I think it's worth just kind of circling back to the point that Dan started with, what can we do about this? Well, I mean, the biggest thing is to be an advocate, locally for these sites. So I've mentioned it to the store folks in the Wegmans that I mentioned there, but there's two levels, I guess. You can do it locally, which is an important advocacy, but may only go as far as the local store, which, who knows how high that goes. But on the other end, social media is a fairly large amplifier, right? So if you can get in the right places, find where they're active, mention, and kind of bring other people who are in your area into those things, especially if you're in EV clubs, you have meetups, that kind of thing. You can certainly start to get people beating on the door of these organizations to say, look, we use these, we're interested in kind of following them, and if they're going away forever, we may find ourselves going away with them, that kind of thing. So Maya seems to be a pretty good chain for a lot of the new places in EVgo. Delivering in Ohio seem to come through the Maya chain. I think it's Maya. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, somebody can let me know.
Meyer.
But Maya, okay, thank you very much. It's a chain there in the Midwest that is pretty common with EV charging. They have Electrify America, Superchargers, and EVgo is a good partner for them as well. Just a big smile on my face for seeing Everyday EV back in the mix here. I don't know if I've caught up with Brandon and Tyler for a long time, so welcome back. But again, agree, need to advocate getting those old stations replaced at Maya with EVgo. The locations in Ohio could really benefit from the upgraded hardware. So welcome back, and definitely that's a productive partnership there, and hopefully they can find that being useful. But I think to Eric's point, that there's definitely a sense in, it kind of overlaps with Walter's video on EVgo getting towards, breaking even, then onto profitability, and having that kind of strategy that Eric mentioned. There's this focus on it. A lot of those sites, or a good chunk of those sites that were rolled out early, just aren't productive. They were good at the time because they were the only place within, maybe 50 miles that had a charger. And yeah, you could stop and 50 kilowatt charge at a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm thinking north of Springfield, Massachusetts, and that area now is where I've reported from Mercedes-Benz going in, Rivian Adventure Network opening up. There was already a supercharger there. There's a independent entrepreneur not far from there who's opened up a site with Violink, I think it is, who may be Niax Energy by the time you read this or watch this. But so the point is, those older 50 kilowatt sites, if they were power constrained and it was going to cost so much more to get them up to speed to even kind of match with 100 kilowatts, maybe they're just not viable anymore. Maybe those locations are just, you have to look at it in sense of time as well. They were put in at a time when 350 kilowatt charging was even kind of seen as unlikely, and now we're moving on to people, streams on X saying, is 400 kilowatt enough now? Are we going to need to go to megawatt charging? Are we going to need to have these 600 kilowatt hyperchargers coming in sooner rather than later? So could just be a factor of a site that was good 10 years ago is no longer, capable of pulling its weight. Okay, let me see if I missed some pieces here. There were lots of good topics coming up, as I mentioned. Great to see you, Brandon, Everyday V. I'm not sure if there's stuff coming out on the channel, but if you want to trip down memory lane, you can certainly go and check out Brandon's early adventures in a Bolt and eventually getting into some other EVs along the way.
That's Brendan Boggs?
Yes.
That's what turned me onto the alternative fuels data center database. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have 100 episodes by now.
This is the trip down memory lane that we hope to be finding. Let me see. So I think Walter had mentioned Mercedes-Benz hypercharging. Definitely want to hit that. But we also have a burning question that was early on from Doug Steventon. Will Eric upgrade to the new Bolt? And you had also mentioned Eric Paul in Bakersfield.
Yeah.
We believe he's in a new Bolt now. So let's ruminate on new versus old Bolt.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not really in a position for that. I have too many cars as it is right now. I'm gonna need to be downsizing. My old Bolt still works, but I do like the new Bolt. Just I don't personally have a need for it yet. I want to get my hands on it just to test it for everybody to see. So maybe I'll need to reach out to GM, see if I can get my hands on one now that it looks like they're doing press release ones. So, but I think Paul had mentioned in my comments, and I wasn't able to circle back with him in the comment, but I guess people are actually seeing closer to 69 kilowatt hours usable out of the pack, which indicates that maybe it's like a 70 kilowatt hour pack that's been, I don't know, like buffered or something in some way to keep it from going over. But yeah, it looks like people are pretty happy, the ones that have had a chance to drive it and live with it, and they're getting better than expected ranges and as expected efficiency, which I think is just kind of in line with what people expected out of the Bolt. And I think that's the one thing that for me, the Bolt EV, if I had to put it into a word, would just be, it's a metronome, right? It's just, it's probably the single easiest, most straightforward EV to own, and you get exactly what you expect out of it, right? And so, and the new Bolt, of course, fixes probably the single biggest Achilles heel, which was just the charging speed when you're on a trip. So now that's not an issue. It's the one car that, without any caveat, I would recommend to someone as a first EV, just because it's so normal. It's just a car that happens to drive on electricity instead of gasoline. So, but yeah, long-winded way of saying I hope I can get my hands on the new Bolt soon, just to put it through its paces and test it. But I don't personally have a need to buy it yet. Who knows? Fortunes can change. So,
but we definitely want to see those tests one way or another. So either way, we will be able to get your opinion on it that way, hopefully. And I want to do the same, just take it out. It's too late almost now, probably, if I can't get my hands on it in the next few weeks. I really want to see where that cold weather charging has been improved. It must have been, because it's really a problem in some winter trips that I've taken here, but not to the extent that I'm going that far, really.
Well,
anyway.
our polar vortex looks like one of those Nickelodeon like slime globs now, so you never know. You could be back to 10 degrees in April.
I have no idea what's going on over there. All I know is it was sunny in England for the first time in a long time in my experience today. So let's hit IONNA and Mercedes-Benz high-power charging. Either over 100 sites active yet? Unfortunately not, but Walter knows who's closest, because he's just done a report on Mercedes-Benz and has been tracking IONNA closely. So
IONNA's closer, but Mercedes definitely has the momentum. And Steve, after you skip town, they opened Braintree, which I guess is a real name.
They had the quietest week in Massachusetts. Even Reddy didn't open anything, which is unheard of in Massachusetts for a long time. The week that I was there, and then I left, and all hell broke loose. And they started.
Yeah, Braintree is a big station. It's got 10 stalls. Right on it. I'm assuming it's right on Interstate 95, if I remember seeing the map correctly. So that happened. And the one that got the press was the Phoenix. Let me say the name of the state correctly. Oregon. I think I got blasted for saying Oregon the wrong way. So Oregon is, I believe, the correct way of pronouncing the state. That one, 10 stalls at a Starbucks, is very nice looking, right off Interstate 5, just on the northern side of the Oregon and California border. And so the momentum is definitely with Mercedes-Benz right now. I don't know why, but IONNA seems to have hit a skid, but I wouldn't put them out. I'm guessing they're just getting ready for a torrent, if I had to guess. They had a very busy end of Q4, and they might have burned through all their firewood, but by all means, it's just a matter of time before things start stacking up again with them. But right now, if I had to guess who was going to cross 100 first, it'd be close, but I think Mercedes-Benz.
I'm going to stick it on IONNA just through sheer numbers. I think from what I'd seen, Mercedes-Benz, unless they've got some sleeper sites out there, their coming soon sites plus what they've got actively open was at 97. And I think IONNA now has that 97. But they were getting close. They were getting to a point. I mean, there's just the amount of locations that IONNA has, ready to open. There must be something going on with it where they want to pause it.
Yeah, I just checked. IONNA last count was 99.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple in there that are public test sites, not public.
Good point. Yeah, those are 99 in the alternative fuels in, et cetera. So yeah, it's probably 97. You're absolutely right.
You'd have to, there's so many IONNA pips out there on that plug share map that, you'd have to assume they're going to cross it in any week now. Outside bet on Walmart, anybody?
Well, I was going to say, I think with IONNA too, right? That's that IONNA speed that they tend to open sites early, whereas I can't see Mercedes-Benz doing that.
Well, but Mercedes,
they're going to test and bet.
Their sites are just gorgeous, and they don't mess around with it. They're not, I think Walter made that point in the video. Like they just look buttoned up. There was one that I visited in Connecticut, not the new one that opened last week, but about a week just before Christmas, and that did have some construction fencing to the side, which I could imagine a German going through with a checklist and go, no, and then getting some contractors put on blast for that. But in general, they don't open sites that aren't fully buttoned up. And
yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying is I expect Mercedes once they're going to have someone out there hand buffing the Alpitronics before they power it up, and IONNA's just going to flip a switch like Dr. Frankenstein. So, but
what about this? It's a good point Zach makes here actually, because Zach is for anyone who's not regular, the founder of Rangeway in California, which is going to be focused heavily on, the charging experience, hospitality, just making, tip top kind of almost A plus service. And Mercedes-Benz obviously has that kind of reputation for premium through its vehicles and the experience there. And like I say, these sites look and, have all the kind of common amenities in terms of Wi-Fi, lighting. They're usually in places that have pretty well opening hours, pretty long opening hours at least. But they have set the bar pretty high initially with the site that you visited, Walter, there in Sandy Springs. Had a lounge, had all the kind of motion sensitive lighting and the canopy and all that. And since then, no canopies, no lounges, all that stuff. Have you seen anything, kind of rumblings that they may look to revisit that kind of level of service?
My gut tells me no, I have not seen anything official. And actually, what I've been waiting for them to announce is the winner of the sweepstakes that was getting plastered all over the place. Someone won it. I don't know if anyone on the call here can say if they won it, but is anyone aware of that sweepstakes that I'm referring to? Mercedes-Benz was having a sweepstakes where you won a all expense paid trip to Atlanta, and you come to the Sandy Springs location, and you have a what do they call it? A charging experience, something, and then you had free tickets to the stadium for some kind of event. And I was kind of packing my bags. I thought I was going to win and everything. And then they started advertising it out there to everyone and their brother. So I don't know who won that, but still no
You don't
word.
just get VIP treatment? I would assume you have a little seat with your name on it.
You would think, but no, it actually isn't the case. Nope. I'm just another person on the bus.
I have not heard anything from my side. I'm sure I entered it at one of my random visits, but I have not heard anything. So
they had that sweepstake on all the chargers. It was also in PlugShare as an advertisement for a good amount of time, and basically everywhere you went to their website, it was being plastered around, and then it disappeared. But I didn't hear anything about who the winner was. I thought it would have been some kind of PR event, but so far nothing.
So I thank you for this add a handle to continue on. Steve, is Duracell coming to the States? Now, that I should explain my background briefly. I am in the UK at the moment, and this is a site down in Chester, a little bit south of Liverpool and Manchester kind of area, not too far from where I am. I'm hoping to visit. Duracell has these Alpatronic hyperchargers, HYC 400s, kind of designed in wonderful battery-like colors. And I haven't heard anything about this coming to the States. No, I can see they would obviously be kind of iconic, but there's so much competition at the moment. I mean, that's true here as well. It's not like there's a lot of consolidation going on in the UK at the moment with some of the providers and the CPOs over here, and that's something that's been predicted in the US and Canadian markets for quite a while. Just based on what we're saying at the moment, I think we can see that we're in more of a strategic expansion kind of way. No one's just planting flags everywhere anymore, but we're definitely in a place where this is going to be a positive rollout. Everyone's going to try and make money in the markets that have decent EV adoption for the next couple of years probably. So that consolidation may have to wait, other than maybe the companies that kind of over leveraged on NEVI and public funds and are kind of running on fumes at this point. So no, not that I know of, but I hope to get some video of this site and share it for US and Canadian viewers. And then beyond that, kind of just watch closely for any news that they are going to enter the US market and bring these funky looking HYC 400s over there. Although that is getting a Series 2, right? Did anyone see that? The HYC 400 is going to kind of get upgraded with a front-facing screen. Everybody seems to be annoyed that they put it on the side, so looks like it's going to go there. Yeah, so there's some stuff there to talk about potentially as well. Let's see. Anyone see any comments that I missed on topics we should hit? I will update on Everyday EV's situation with they've got a Leaf. That's right. I forgot where I kind of lost track of what EVs you guys were driving, but the lease on the Leaf is up in October. I'm currently shopping around. New Leaf is impressive, but I'm looking either at the Rivian R2 or Subaru Trailseeker. That may bring us on to models that are coming up this year. I know we'd wanted to talk about Rivian a little bit, maybe on the Adventure Network as well, but certainly the R2 is getting a lot of attention, and within the next 10 days, I guess, will be kind of opened up and more information on pricing and production will be shared. Anyone kind of, I mean, obviously Eric said he's not looking at the new Bolt, so that means you're not looking at the new R2 either. I'm probably not in a position to pick one up at the moment, although the R2 has kind of attracted my attention. The only thing that gives me a sticking point is the charging. I mean, I think it would probably be good enough, but having lived the 800 volt life for 4 years now and 100,000 plus miles, I'm not desperate to go back to a 400 volt architecture, although that could come in handy at Tesla superchargers in some of the locations. Walter, any thoughts on the R2, or if you want to branch out into other models?
Yeah, there's so many options right now. It's just I daydream about myself driving one of these new EVs just about every other day. But the reality is my son jacked up the miles on my Equinox lease, and most of the time I'm driving my wife's car and having to put the seats back into the right position before I pull it into the garage. That's the reality of the situation. So it's going to be a while before the Schulze household sees any cycling of cars in the garage. So we're probably just going to keep. Plus, I just love the Equinox. I can't wait for the lease to be over. I'll never lease a car again. I don't like this whole being suffocated in a number of miles I could drive. I just want to drive. I put 50,000 miles in 2 years, I think, on my Volvo XC40 Recharge. I just like to drive the wheels off a car when I get behind the steering wheel of it. So once the lease ends, I'm going to do a purchase of it. It's a well-sized car. I like the powertrain dynamics, and the features have everything I want. And just recently got YouTube added to the center console, the over-the-air updates. It's just a really nice car, so I'm likely going to keep that for a while. But there's so many out there. As you visit stations, you just see all the other ones, like the Ioniq 9. I would love to drive around in an Ioniq 9. They're pretty reasonably priced too. Ioniq 6 is definitely on my list of things that I daydream of being behind the wheel of. There's just so many. Plus the new ones coming from Toyota really have me intrigued. I did see a review of the Solterra. What is it called? The Subaru. Is it the Subaru Solterra?
Uncharted is the new one.
Thank you. Yes, the Uncharted, not the Solterra, the Uncharted, and so just many options out there. And of course, the Cadillac lineup is pretty deep as well. I can see myself behind the wheel of just about any of those: the Optic, the Vistic, the IQ, or a Lyric. Actually, the Lyric V is really where I spend my daydreaming time behind the wheel of. If I had a choice, I'd probably get a Lyric V.
I'm gonna need a big garage. Or just get them all.
Move in with Eric and use his abundant space for parking cars.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to see, the Subarus are always kind of more in my like that would be the big reason why I wouldn't get a Bolt, right? Unless I was replacing my Bolt, is because I actually do have a need for something that's a little bit more off-road capable, and so if I was going to do that, I probably would look at the Subaru. So yeah, like the Trail Seeker, something like that. So.
Yeah, I don't see a new EV in my future, but I definitely want to do the Eric path and just start testing these and get out a little more and see what the new crop is going to deliver. Because there's a lot of talk as well about the 30K Ford truck down in the comments. Again, we've got to seeing is believing on that kind of stuff. I think there's just a lot of these models that are out in the ether. I think the ones that come this year, I'm excited about the potential for Toyota and Subaru to actually deliver. Because as soon as you get that, you unlock. It's more for wider EV adoption for me. You unlock the loyalists who are only going to buy those brands because that's what they've had for decades.
Yeah, once they hit on the showrooms, I really think they're going to start selling well, because as you say, there's a lot of brand loyalty with those badges. I ran across someone who recently picked up a BZ 2026 with a J3400 port at an IONNA station. And the reason they got it is because they had a Prius that had 200,000 miles on it that had an $8,000 repair. And so they just went to the showroom and got whatever was new. And that was what was presented. I don't think they were like overly enthusiastic about the whole concept of an electric vehicle, but they just needed a car that was in line with what they were looking for. And they just I think there's going to be a lot of sales coming out of Toyota showrooms for their EV lineup, more so than they were anticipating.
Yeah, and I don't want to lose this quip, but yeah, I for one am looking forward to the new Ford Ranchero EV. I don't think it's going to be a Maverick. I think it's going to be a Ranchero. But all joking aside, yeah, no, I think Toyota. I feel like there's a lot of undue criticism within the EV community towards Toyota and Subaru specifically. And, with the exception of the very first year, and I believe they did do a software update on them, they had the really poor charging speeds when the BZ, when it was the BZ4X and the Solterra first came out. But to Toyota and Subaru's credit, they fixed that. And now you have very competitive, what is it, like 28 minute, 10 to 80% charging speeds is what they're, and there's still people who are, I feel like, nitpicking about certain EV specific things that are lacking from the Toyota and Subaru EVs. But these are things that a lot of us in the EV community lived with, without for a very long time and don't necessarily feel the need to have. So I'm not sure that that's really a valid criticism. I think that they've made, like you said, I think, Steve, they're going to make much bigger waves in the EV community in terms of adoption than people realize. And I think we just need to accept that and promote them as much as we can, because even if they're not our thing, they're someone's thing.
And one kind of, if I could just interrupt real quick, one thing that they also said that was interesting as as new owners at the BZ is they got a year of free charging with EVgo. So that partnership is also cascading down to a year of free charging. So that's still part of the mix for people who are getting Toyotas.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in the free charging thing because it had gone away to an extent. Quickly say ta-ta to Brandon. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you jumping in. Really good to see you back in the stream. And yeah, we'll have to connect again offline. Make sure I keep up with your vehicle choices and what you get. Yeah, the free charging piece is interesting because I think with the EVgo results, there's some really interesting math going on with their average prices. And especially with a lot of the rideshare drivers being a big part. There was 25% of their utilization was put down to rideshare drivers, and yet they were talking about a price increase. This is really in the weeds, so we don't have to go all the way down, but from 55 cents per kilowatt hour was kind of what they were modeling the revenue on, up to 64 cents per kilowatt hour. But for me, I'm like, I don't understand where that number comes from, because people can't be paying that, across the board. I mean, the rideshare drivers definitely aren't paying that because the business would go under. There may be those kind of things at peak and in the middle of the day off plan with session fees baked in. But as soon as you get on those EVgo plans, the Plus Max or the even just the Plus, you bring those rates down to a decent kind of 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So I'm not quite sure where the accounting was going on in there that they were using for that path to profitability. And then the EVgo kind of free plans come in, right? So you start to think about what they were giving away to all of us lucky road trippers last December, and then rolling into January, we all took advantage of $85 that was supposedly for GM EV owners, but it went to Ford Mustang Mach-E owners and all kinds of other folks. So there have to be some oddities in there, I think. But in any case, free charging coming back would be an interesting, because that was really used as a rod to kind of bash Electrify America for a long time, right? And to an extent that was fair, because they did unlimited plans, they did 3 years, they did all this stuff which really starts to clog up the chargers. But if EVgo is doing it in the right way on Toyota, a brand that is basically just people are going to, exactly as you say, just go in and say, what's the electric version of my RAV4, or what's the electric version of my Outback? And if they want to sell it, and then they can also say, oh, by the way, as gas prices spike, which is a whole other world, we can give you free charging for a year. There's starting to become pretty compelling case for electric again, just as we were saying, EVs are tough to sell. It's going to be a difficult year.
Well, and on that free charging too, I think there was a confluence of issues with Electrify America. I mean, obviously early on it was the reliability, but also you're talking about stations that never power split. And I think that was the big problem. And if you have an EVgo that's you're getting free charging, it's going to be a lot harder to clog up an EVgo site with free charging EVs just by the nature of the power splitting. Same with HYC 400 sites and things like that. So I think there is room now. And it's probably why Tesla they never got burned as bad for a lot of their free supercharging plans, is because of that ability to distribute power. So I think there might be room for these promotions. And I think there's a valid way of executing them to promote your network and get exposure while not going overboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be just, I think the way that the Ioniq 5 did it was reasonable because it charged quick enough. It did the 30-minute kind of cut off, and after that you get charged. Well, that should be, if they're intelligent enough to do it software-wise, which it should be at this point, past 80%, you should be charged something. Past X number of minutes, you should be charged something. So there's an incentive to get back, or to accept that you're going to pay something and start to pay into the network. But yeah, I can see that point. Whenever we were in that point where Electrify America stations were clogged with free chargers, it was always the EVgo ones that I looked to kind of say, well, there were still free charging plans, right? It wasn't like they were the only one, because Walter had his lyric on the EVgo for a couple of years, and there were people who were using that. But as you say, it's they've got enough out there, and it's also not so widespread that they were clogging up those stations. Although there was an example there, which New York probably makes sense for this to be the one where the taxi drivers were clogging up those. So yeah, and it was Toyotas. There we go. Here it is. Makes sense why EVgo's in New York have a line of Toyotas lined up to charge. Yeah, the time I visited the Manhattan Gravity Charging Hub, it was only Toyota BZ, charging on this supposed front state-of-the-art 500 kilowatt hardware, all a line of old school BZ4Xs before the software update, charging at 20 kilowatts. So quite the contrast. All right, where are we at? I guess we should give Walmart some space here. Shout out as well to St. Louis EV, good channel, and I think you did a IONNA second birthday celebration. I seem to remember seeing some stuff on that, so yeah, thanks for that as well. But the point here was Electrify America has been upgrading the hardware at Walmart lately. I wonder if Walmart gave them an ultimatum to upgrade or get out for their own network. My understanding of that, and Crazy Postman adds the context of Electrify America upgrading Weatherford, Oklahoma Walmart. My sense with them is that they just are on this. They upgraded the East Coast first, from what I could see. Moved out to California. I think the Electrify America stations out there seem to be getting more of a focus in the last year or so. And I think the middle of the country, essentially. I know Landon at the Arkansas E-Traveler has reported from some of the sites there that he was worried they didn't upgrade quickly enough, because they, obviously where they're really needed is kind of where they were the backbone of some of the cross-country runs. That's not necessarily the case anymore, but certainly you're more vulnerable to reliability issues on those old Electrify America sites in the middle of the country than you would be on the coasts where there's so much competition now. But I don't think personally that there's any pressure from Walmart. I mean, there's probably something internally to say, we eventually want to get to our own. It's probably catalyzing their network build out a little more. But I think the essential idea is that, eventually these upgrades will happen. And it's just that those are the levels and the places that got kind of left to the end. Any thoughts on, where EA and Walmart's intersection with the current expansion of Walmart EV charging project hits?
Well, I was just going to say, of course, this will be the perennial shout out, and maybe we can get Landon on here sometime for the local Walmart expert. But I, from my perspective, I see Walmart as just having too much to do right now to even bother. Like just leave, Electrify America to do whatever it is they do, because there are so many sites. And I think people are shocked by this too, because when they're seeing, especially like you look at the Dallas Fort Worth area where Walmart is doing a lot of their big build out, it's like a lot of people didn't realize there were that many Walmarts, right? They have so many store locations that if they just do a basic 8-stall site at every Walmart location, they not only would be the biggest network in the United States, they would be bigger than all of the other networks combined. And that's just with a basic site at every Walmart location throughout the country, because there are just so many sites. So I think I think they just don't have time to even bother like with the Electrify America locations. They're just doing their own thing, and as they build that out, then maybe in 5 years, maybe they'll come back and say, hey, Electrify America, pound sand, we're gonna replace your station. So I think I just see too much work being done by Walmart right now, and like absolutely no overlap with the Walmarts that do have Electrify America chargers.
And they really are starting to move. There's I'm seeing, I know Walter, there's a couple in your area that are looking to open pretty soon, clustered around North Carolina. I'm trying to remember all the states that I had on my list. I was trying to keep track of. Utah, there's construction. There's a lot. A bunch of new states will be on the board pretty soon. And the thing is, with Walmart, it's a little different to IONNA. When you see IONNA kind of start to blow up, with construction, it tends to be across the country, but individually in states, some states have got kind of, pretty good momentum, but there's not the same as a Walmart. If you look at the Dallas Fort Worth area, it just, they literally opened a couple of stations, and then like measles, it was everywhere. They just had this kind of pins in the map across the board. And this seems to be the case in Arizona, California to an extent, definitely down in the Southeast. I don't know, Walter, you must have been to some of those sites in your various travels and just see that construction starting to really go gangbusters.
You talking about Walmart sites? Yeah, so the closest Walmart to where I'm currently sitting is waiting on commissioning. It has 4 Alpitronic hyperchargers in the ground. I'm really interested to see what the pricing is going to be, because we don't know yet if they're going to be doing something similar to BP Pulse, where it's basically similar pricing across the entire country. So we can have kind of like a McDonald's know what to expect experience when you pull into a Walmart station, or because we all know that utility rates are highly variable in different regions and demand charges are what they are. Whether or not Walmart is going to try to adjust pricing per station in order to dial in the accounting for each and every station as to what it costs to actually deliver that service, in which case there'd be a great deal of variability with the pricing. And so we haven't really seen that, I think, pan out yet, because there's just so few stations, but it's coming. If they're going to meet their goals of blanketing, as Eric said, the entire country with Walmart charging stations and become the go-to place for neighborhood filling up, as well as likely road tripping as well, because of the amenity attachments to their stations. If that's going to be the case, they're going to have to get their game on here pretty quick, because daylight's burning. And I think the goal was 2030 last I heard. And if that's their goal, if you just pull out a calculator and see how many stations they got to get done between now and 2030, the velocity here is really going to start picking up, and you're going to start seeing things cracking. But here in North Kakalaki, there's 2 currently getting ready to be commissioned, none open, and additional ones spotted through permitting. And I've been to them, and they haven't shown any indication of construction yet. But so we're probably about, I don't know, 35% of the pips on the PlugShare map for Walmart that are currently under construction awaiting commissioning.
It's going to be a big one when it pops.
Yeah, and I was going to say I saw a question someone asked about that one, and I think we only know of one site, right, where they co-located a Walmart branded charger with an EA. By at least on a store level. On the city level, it doesn't seem to matter. They're just putting, but on a store level, I think there's only one where they co-located.
Yeah, this is one where we should have got landed on after all. That would be a whole new thing coming soon. I just don't think, as we've kind of hit, that they are aligned. I think, Walmart was a good place for EA to go initially because they were able to blanket the country and hit those cross-country routes where nobody else would have given them the time of day, for that level of locations and just kind of one partner. But yeah, I think they'll pretty much just leave EA where they are. Maybe they'll retire some sites eventually, but that's probably under contract for however long, maybe 10 years. And we'll probably see those go by the wayside and slowly be transitioned across. But I think this one was right below, was actually relevant kind of for you, Eric. And then I have a question that was directed to Walter. But on the activation, Walmart's obviously going more with the app because there's a clear retail play there, and there's a much bigger overlap of gathering data, and there's a 10% discount, I think it was, off the charging for Walmart Plus members, so you can kind of see where they want to go with that and know who's charging and when. But you've obviously been a champion in California as a state, has kind of been much more towards open access, need card readers, payment readers, don't want to have to use an app if it's not, and you can have it, but it shouldn't be essential. Where are you standing on that kind of piece of Walmart's trying to push people through the app instead of other ways of potentially paying?
Well, yeah, I've never liked gatekeeping on any of the chargers. So that's always been I don't mind if you set up an app. I don't mind if you set up a RFID card or QR code that goes to an app or whatever, as long as it works, right? Because I've had some issues where those things aren't working, but there's still an element of gatekeeping there. Whereas my preference would be, you just need to open it up so that people can pay with a common, whether it's a digital wallet or a credit card. There needs to be some sort of an option where someone who's not a member, who's never used your service before, has an easy access. And I think this is a win-win for these CPOs too, whether they realize it or not, because if I come to a charger and I need to use it and I'm not a member, and you make me jump through 3 or 4 or 5 different hoops, I am far more likely to just move on than if I were to use a credit card, it worked right away for me, and then I say, hey, that wasn't a bad experience, and they're where I need to use them. I'm going to get an account, and moving forward, I'll use them with that account. So I think they're actually shooting themselves in the foot too a little bit by the gatekeeping. But like I was saying, in California, there really isn't an option. So I'm kind of interested to see this myself, because I have, I think, 8 to maybe 10 Walmart locations that are currently under permitting. Again, shout out Alejandro 66 and a few other people, but there's like 10 sites. So far, I haven't seen any construction, but I'm going to do a little quick whistle stop tour. I can't say that fast. Whistle stop tour around those different Walmart charging sites just to see if I can find anything, because some of them have been in permitting for like 6 or 8 months, and I'll be actively looking at what they're doing. And this is maybe something else that maybe I'm going too far afield with this, but is Walmart the only CPO that we know of right now in North America that's using the A400?
North America, no, because BC Hydro just started rolling them out. And who was the other one? On the Run charging. So there's a couple in Canada, and I feel like there was someone down in Walter's neck of the woods. Maybe it was Florida.
Okay, that's using the A400s.
No, that was probably Walmart as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's only Canadian suppliers at the moment that I know of, at least.
Okay, and about half the permitting in California in my area seems to be for A400. So I'll be able to kind of see that distinction as well. So yeah, I guess stay tuned. I'll be doing some investigating myself soon. But yeah, in California, they don't have an option. It has to be credit card readers. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do nationwide, though, how they're going to manage that.
We'll get your opinion sooner rather than later, I hope. Yeah, make sure we hit the question for Walter. It was direct. This was specifically on the video I think you published today. Why do you not think the Tesla Supercharger network has been profitable for years, according to your comment under the EVgo video?
Correct. Yeah. So someone posted a comment saying, "Hey, Tesla Supercharger has been profitable for all these years, and EVgo is just getting profitable." And I said, "What makes you think the Tesla Supercharger network is profitable?" And I don't know. That was just about 20 minutes before coming on here. And my understanding, I watched Dylan Loomis's Electrified, and he is very in depth and in the weeds in Tesla financials. And it's my understanding the Supercharger business unit is reported under other services, which is lumped in with insurance and a few other things. It's not explicitly spelled out how much money is being earned or lost on the Tesla Supercharger network. It's just an ancillary service for Tesla, and it's not explicitly reported. So I don't think there's any way of determining, and unless Dylan is incorrect, but I've been listening to him for a long time, and that's always how he's referred to it. There's no way of knowing really what they're making or not making, but it was my understanding the Tesla Supercharger network was designed to be operationally solvent, but not really a approach to earning money from Tesla drivers. It was designed to alleviate the buyer's remorse from purchasing an electric vehicle by having access to a ubiquitous network built into the navigation system of the car that you purchased to make it turnkey, super easy in order to travel long distances in an electric vehicle. That was its purpose, and it wasn't really designed to make money for Tesla. And now that it's become an open network and there's higher prices for non-Tesla, there's some increased revenues coming in, but I again don't think it was ever explicitly spelled out in their financials. So I don't think the point is, I don't think you can say if they're profitable or to what degree or whatever. And so EVgo is a different animal. They're an SEC filed public company with stockholders, and they report their financials very clearly about what they're earning and what they are not. Anyway, so that's where that came from. And
glad we can link the videos. No, anything else to kind of?
No. That was it, and it's just minor thing. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I just don't think the Tesla Supercharger initially in its inception was designed to be a profitable business. It was designed as a different mission, and EVgo is designed to be a profitable. EVgo is a for-profit company.
Yeah, because not very few of them, except for obviously IONNA and Mercedes now, we're starting to grow those, are actually, selling cars as well, right? It's kind of like the free charging plans. You kind of
it's kind of like a country club membership that comes along with the ownership.
Yeah, and as a lot of people pointed in here, it was, Supercharger was originally under marketing. Employees have said to me it's mainly considered a marketing expense. But and they're historically, I always say this wasn't really the case. They didn't do marketing. They did a lot of referral marketing. They did a lot of, a lot of people sold a lot of cars based on referral codes and that kind of thing. But they did not pay for a long time for ads, traditional media, TV advertising, digital advertising, all that kind of thing. So that's the piece that, is kind of where the superchargers go. There's ubiquitous charging across the country with Tesla's name on it, right? So that Tesla is out there and accessible.
Well, and I do think that there's something that you can glean from the actual pricing too, because that's one of the things that if you look across the board, there tends to be very different pricing from the superchargers to public chargers. And so if you know that the public chargers have some sort of a margin based into their energy costs, and the fact that Tesla, at least for Tesla owners, is undercutting that usually by 10 to 15 cents per kilowatt hour, that's a indication that at least for a majority of their usage, which is Tesla owners, they are not profiting from the energy that they're selling. It's basically almost pass-through rates.
Yeah, there's a bunch of kind of follow-on here. I think maybe the evolving side of the company, and especially since we started with Superchargers.
Yeah, we could definitely speculate that it's above break even and it's earning some money, but I don't think it's ever designed as a mission statement to be a profit center for Tesla. It's designed to be something else, but it may evolve as is being discussed now. As you know, the Tesla Supercharger for Business is now open to other car makes, and so who knows, the Tesla Supercharger may evolve if they get longer cables. Oops, I said it.
Those are critical elements.
The real burning question here too, though, Crazy Postman. Yes, it's a kitty sneeze. This little booger has a bad infection, so he's recovering with antibiotics.
Okay, I think I need to get my cat on that as well. She's been doing all kinds of sniffing and sniveling recently, so. I'm not actually sure that this is a sign we're coming to the end here. We're defining Japanese snacks for some reason in the comments. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. So that may be the kind of hysteria end of the podcast. And he says that can't be right about it. So don't know what's going on there, Crazy Postman, but you have Walter's address to send your favorite Japanese snacks to now. So go ahead and do that. I think we're probably running up on time here, and I'm certainly running up on time because I don't even know what time it is. I've got 3 different clocks going for West Coast, East Coast.
I was thinking, man, it's got to be late, and you're in Greenwich. Meantime, 0.
Yeah, but I think I'm still my clock says 9:21, so it's obviously still on Eastern, and I think that's where my head and body are at as well. So hopefully I was coherent for most of that. The one point though, this was relatively something we don't do that often, mainly because I was traveling and didn't have a whole lot of time to pull out lots of topics. But if this was something that was interesting, let us know. We can kind of schedule these in more often. I know we bounced around different topics, but I think the community and the folks in the live chat are always, fonts of knowledge. Half the time you're breaking news for us. So thank you, Leonard. Thank you for everybody else for doing that. But if you thought this was worthwhile, definitely leave it here in the live chat. If it is something you catch up on the next day, leave it in the comments on the YouTube video or email me at plugandplayev@gmail.com. And we can do some more of these. If it was just kind of a good random one-off, that's fine as well. Not really worried about it. But as always, appreciate my co-hosts, who I will shout out here in YouTube address form. News Coolum channel. You are going to get content on Walmart's payment systems and probably a bunch of all kinds of different. You got something burning.
Two of the BP Pulse sites opened. So
I saw
well, one is a Petro, one is a travel center, and I'll keep tabs on the others. But we're getting very close to a cohesive BP Pulse travel corridor up and down I-5. So,
and yours are getting at the Arcos, I guess, or some of the others. They're getting Albatronics, right?
Yeah, and that's just my personal opinion, but there was no place for 150 kilowatt chargers at convenience stores. Those HYC 400s are a great improvement.
Everything I've heard and read suggests that they had an order of tritiums, that they had the burn through, and now they've done it, and they'll probably be switching much more to the Alpes. Good. So we'll hopefully see those on your videos very soon. Walter at the Network Architect channel has a video you can go and watch right now, on the EVgo results that we've kind of touched upon, but will be much more detailed there. He also did an excellent update on the stealth mode expansion of Mercedes-Benz high-powered charging.
And someone did ask about it, and I just looked at the file. It is 97 sites. 96 sites currently open.
For Mercedes-Benz?
For Mercedes-Benz, directly from Mercedes-Benz, 96 sites.
Yeah, it's when I last looked, it had when they were both together, it showed you could filter off coming soon and active. And when I filtered it off, it had like 70 something, and then it added up to like 97. But they've been in such a stealth expansion. I'm gonna have to go and look and see what I've missed, because obviously some of it's on my doorstep, or when I get home, it's on my doorstep. So you can check Walter out at the Network Architect channel YouTube, and also Out of Spec Bits DC fast charging updates and other interviews. I'm sure that's going to kick into high gear with various events, trade events, and shows coming up soon. And for myself, if I ever go to bed, you will still get updates from this evi.plugandplayev.com. That's a weekly newsletter of all the kind of stuff that you'll be able to track on dcfctracker.com as well. And I did actually manage to get a video out on Plug and Play EV. So on the channel, if you haven't managed to catch that, up in the borderlands of New Hampshire and Maine, we have Mercedes-Benz Supercharging, we have a new IONNA, we have the Rivian Adventure Network, and there was already an Electrify America and Superchargers there. So kind of one of those nice little hubs that is exemplifying what's going on in the EV charging, fast charging world in the US, at least at the moment. So hopefully someone can watch that. Appreciate all your comments and questions along to help us this evening. I'm going to go and get some sleep, hopefully, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, cheers, nerds.